Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new workshop session presented by Code Labs Academy. Today, we are going to cover all about Tailwind CSS. Let me take a brief moment to introduce myself. My name is Mo, and I am a web development instructor at Code Labs Academy. So today, we are going to talk about what is Tailwind CSS first. We are going to introduce Tailwind CSS, see some history behind it, and then we are going to see how we can link Tailwind CSS to our HTML files so we can use all those pre-built classes inside our elements. After that, we are going to cover the basic to advanced concepts about Tailwind CSS. So everything from like the most common classes, the responsive design, the prefixes used in Tailwind CSS, like the hover effect, focus effect, etc. And then right after that, we are going to try and clone a simple website from the internet using Tailwind CSS. So this should be pretty fun. Let's get started. So what is Tailwind CSS actually? Tailwind CSS is a utility-first CSS framework. It's packed with classes like Flex to change the display property to Flex, PT-4 to change the padding of the top side, text center, etc. All those classes can be composed to build any design directly in your markup, so in your HTML. So this actually provides us a cool way and allows us to pack all our UI and the stylings of our UIs into the HTML itself. Tailwind CSS also provides a set of predefined classes which usually apply a single style. Now, before Tailwind CSS, whenever you want to apply some styles to HTML elements, what you would do is to create some classes. Like for example, this is a class to change the background color to the blue color. So we're just basically creating a new class, changing this property and giving it a value of blue. And then if you want to apply this rule to HTML element, what you want to do is to add this class to each element, giving each box or each div a blue background. Now, Adam Wathan, which is the creator of Tailwind CSS, used the same approach. So he created a set of predefined classes for each style that you might want to apply to HTML elements. Nowadays, almost all styles are available in Tailwind CSS. So compared to writing CSS itself, Tailwind is a very just get going friendly. Like I mentioned, responsive design is baked in. You don't need to spend time on the front end coming up with design language around what a primary or secondary or danger class would look like. And they hold your hand for picking color palettes. You don't need to worry about CSS naming patterns like PEM, for example, and it leads to super long class names in your HTML. So this is like, you can say one disadvantage of using Tailwind CSS, but we are going to address this problem during this session. We will see a cool method to actually make our HTML look pretty while using Tailwind CSS. So it is most suitable if you're using a component framework library where you define once and you reuse that component. For example, React.js, Vue.js, Svelte, etc. And there exist other frameworks for CSS like Bootstrap and Foundation. They work on a component-based approach, which means we get predefined components like alerts, cards, navigation bars, etc., which looks almost similar on all websites. But in Tailwind CSS, we can create our own components from scratch without writing any CSS styles. So we are only using classes, predefined classes inside our HTML, packing all the UI and the stylings of that UI all inside our HTML file. Another purpose to use Tailwind CSS is to make our CSS lightweight, which means our website loading time will decrease significantly when you use Tailwind CSS. Now, let's talk about the advantages of using Tailwind CSS. So first, it is easy to learn, okay? There is this awesome documentation provided with Tailwind CSS. We are going to take a look at it in just a second. The second advantage is that it is highly customizable. So unlike Bootstrap and Foundation in other frameworks, when you use Tailwind CSS, you are going to create your components from scratch using predefined classes. So you have the liberty to actually customize all those components and also copy your components and use them again. If you compare this approach with Bootstrap, for example, with Bootstrap, you are going to just copy the same component and use it whenever you need that component with all the websites that you are going to build. And another advantage is that it's faster styling process when you use Tailwind CSS. So we are going to see that once we start cloning a website from the internet, it is pretty fast. The styling process is really fast using Tailwind CSS. We are going to see that. It's safely to use in production, okay? Because nowadays you can use Tailwind CSS using Post Css and the auto prefixer packages, etc. So you are going to have a compiled CSS file that is ready for production with all the prefixes for more browser compatibility. Yeah, and the other advantage is that it is easy to create responsive designs using Tailwind CSS. So when we talk about responsive designs, all we need to do when we use Tailwind CSS is to add some prefixes. Each prefix is going to apply different styles according to the minimum width of the device screen. We are going to see that when we start learning about the responsive design of Tailwind CSS. The other advantage is that it is easily used with any framework. It's easy to integrate Tailwind CSS with any front-end framework, whether it's React.js, Vue.js, you name it. Now, the only disadvantage that I think of when using Tailwind CSS is that your HTML file might get pretty big and the markup looks pretty verbose because we are adding all those classes for styling the elements. But we can address this problem using some directives like the apply directive. So basically, we are going to create some classes, apply the Tailwind CSS classes to those classes, and then use those classes in our HTML. For example, if we want to create a button, we are probably going to add some padding, some margins, some background color. We change the text color, but we don't need to use those classes for each and every button inside our HTML. Instead, we are going to create a new class named button, for example. We are going to apply all those stylings using the apply directive, and then we can use that button class whenever we need it inside our HTML. Awesome. Now, before we start our workshop, let me take a brief moment and talk about CodeLabs Academy. So if you're interested in learning web development, CodeLabs Academy offers some highly updated and intensive programs that helps you to achieve your goals. So whether you think that programming is fun, maybe you've seen the data about the job markets related to web developers and their salary, maybe you just have a project idea you want to create. So you can learn to code from any location on the planet. You will study remotely from the comfort of your own home with live teaching, one-on-one support, and a project-based curriculum. So CodeLabs Academy offers various bootcamps with the best price on the market. You can check them out at codelabsacademy.com. So you can check our website and browse through all the upcoming bootcamps, get more information about each bootcamp. For example, you can see the information about all the financing options that bootcamps actually provides. There are some options to pay in advance, options to pay in installments. About the upcoming bootcamps, we have UX UI bootcamps, data science, SQL bootcamps, web development bootcamps. For example, this web development bootcamp is going to start the next month on the 4th of June. It's with the price of 999 euros, which is a really great price with all the services that CodeLabs Academy offers. You can also check the workshops page. You can browse through previous workshops. You can play and watch all the previous workshops presented by CodeLabs Academy. There are workshops for Python, workshops for data science, for web development, like this, for example, JavaScript for beginners. And you can also register to you can find all our upcoming workshops. These workshops are going to be conducted for free, so you can register at any time. Here are the dates. These workshops are going to be held on Eventbrite. So yeah, feel free to register to any of these workshops to just get a good idea about what CodeLabs Academy really offers. For example, here is a web development bootcamp information session. So if you are interested in learning web development, you can check this session. It's on the 15th of May Okay, you can register at any time, or you can apply to any bootcamp straight by clicking this button right here and choose a course, your email, etc. Now, before going any further, make sure that you have Node.js installed on your machine. So head over to nodejs.org and you can grab the latest stable version, download it, and the installation is pretty straightforward. You just follow up the setup guide and you will have Node.js installed in no time. To check if Node.js is installed, you can type node-v and you can see the version of Node.js that you have. Currently, I'm working with Node.js version 16.13, which is somehow an updated or recent version, because the latest version is 16.15. But it's okay, we can use this. We can use this as well. The other thing that you're going to need is a code editor. I'm going to use Visual Studio Code, or VS Code for short. This is an awesome code editor that probably a lot of developers are using. And you can start using VS Code in no time. It's free to download. You can just select which machine or operating system you want to install VS Code on, and just download the stable version. Okay, now let's jump straight to the TailwindCSS.com website and see what Tailwind CSS is. So this is the landing page for Tailwind CSS. The main title is Rapidly Build Modern Websites Without Ever Leaving Your HTML. This is a cool phrase. Okay, now before starting to use Tailwind CSS, we need to actually have it imported or installed in our machine. So let's click on Get Started. There are a lot of ways to install or use Tailwind CSS when you are styling your HTML files. So you can install the Tailwind CLI, use Post Css, or you can play with CDN directly inside by adding Tailwind CSS script in your HTML file, and you are pretty much good to go. You can start writing all the predefined classes that Tailwind CSS provides for us. Like, for example, this font bold, we actually applied a bolder font. This is text 3XL, which changed the font size. This changed the text decoration and gave it a value of underline. Awesome. Now let's head to our terminal, open up code. Okay, now I have VS Code open. The first thing I need you to do, guys, is to check these two extensions. Okay, the first one is Live Server. So install Live Server. Live Server allows us to actually have a development server behind the scenes where we can run our HTML file inside the browser, and it can track all the changes that you are doing. Once you, for example, add a class, then save the file, the browser is going to automatically refresh, and you are going to see all the changes applied straight into your browsers. We are going to see that in a second, but first, you need to install Live Server, and the other extension is Tailwind Css Intellisense, okay? So this one. This will provide us with a cool way to actually see each Tailwind CSS class in the suggestion list. And also, we can hover over any class and see basically what does this class applies as rules. Let me give you a quick idea, but first we need to create a new HTML file. Let's call it index.html. Let's have a simple boilerplate ready for us. Awesome. Let's change the title to Learning Tailwind CSS. Awesome. Now all we need to do is to add that script tag right before the head tag. Okay. Now let's create a heading. Let's do some text right here. Hello world. Okay, so we can open up this HTML file with Live Server. Okay, awesome. I have my file, my HTML file open, and as you can see already, I think this font style is applied by Tailwind CSS. This is not the default file size. We can check this out. If we comment out this script tag, we can see that Live Server first, we refresh the page for us whenever we save, and then we see that Tailwind CSS is no longer linked with the HTML file. Okay, so let's untag this. We have our heading. Okay, now let's start using Tailwind CSS. Now here is a simple class to change the text color. For example, I want my text color to be a variant of blue color. So I will type text, then blue, and we can see suggestions in just a second. My machine is pretty much slow right now. I don't know why, but it's okay. We can type 500, for example, save the file, and we see that our heading is now blue. Okay, we can change the intensity of the blue. We go with 900. You can see that the blue is now more darker. We can try 200. Yeah, so pretty much you get the idea. Whenever you choose a color, when you are using a color class, so text color, text dash color dash the intensity. So if we change this to red, we are going to have a lighter red as a color for our heading. If we change this to 800 or 600 maybe, we are going to have this nice red color. Okay, awesome. So you might be asking, why are we adding script tag instead of link tag for CSS framework? Let me go to this website, okay? As you can see, this website is actually cdn.tailwindcss.com/version3. This is actually a JavaScript file. So as you can see, this is a JavaScript code. We have a function, some variables, another variable, etc. That is because up to Tailwind 2, there was nothing known as the GET compiler. So GET compiler means just-in-time compiler. This means that Tailwind is generating your stylings and classes just in time, which means as you're writing your styles, Tailwind is generating those styles in memory. So before Tailwind 3, the bundle size in the development environment was so huge, probably in megabytes, which became no longer an option. So something else needed to be done. The smart people behind Tailwind CSS came up with the just-in-time compiler, which pretty much allows you to write all the Tailwind classes that you want, but it will parse that on the runtime, and it will just create styles for those particular classes, those classes that you are using. So instead of loading all the bundles, all the classes provided by Tailwind CSS, it's just giving you the classes that you are using in your HTML file. So this JavaScript code that we have seen right here is responsible for parsing all your HTML file. It will grab all the classes that you are using, Tailwind CSS classes, and at the end, it will actually compile for you a CSS file with only those classes that you are using. So no more classes, which means a smaller bundle size, which means faster loading time for your website, which is awesome. Now, there are other ways to install Tailwind CSS in your machine. We can use Tailwind CLI, which is the simplest way to install the Tailwind CSS. But if you are working on a project and you want to add auto prefixes, for example, then it's more recommended to use Post Css, because not all CSS performs the same on all browsers. Here, auto prefixes means Tailwind will generate the styles with prefixes like WebKit, Moz, MS, etc. So to install Tailwind CSS using Post Css, there are a bunch of steps that we need to follow. So the first one is to grab this line right here, this command. We go to our terminal, we paste that command. All I'm going to add right now is Post Css-CLI. So I'm going to install this package as well, so we can use the Post CSS when we are generating our compiled Tailwind CSS file. So if we don't install Post CSS, we cannot actually use a command or script to be used with npm. So basically, the final objective is to type npm run build to build my CSS file, or npm run watch to build that file and also watch our changes. So whenever we add a new class, it's going to recompile that file and add that class again to our generated CSS file. So let's hit enter and install all these packages. Okay, so now inside our folder, we are adding all needed packages like Tailwind CSS, Post CSS, Post CSS CLI for making your website ready for production, and Auto Prefixer for generating prefixes for more browser compatibility. The second step is actually to create the tailwind.config.js. So instead of creating it manually, if we check this folder, we can see that now we have 4 node modules folder with all the dependencies in the packages inside. We have a new package.json and we have the package log.json. We need the tailwind.config.js as per the documentation. So let's grab that as well. The second step is to add this npx tailwind init command to generate that tailwind.config file. So let's paste this right here, or just type it, TailwindCSS init. Okay, so now we have our config file added to the project. So basically, this tailwind.config file is responsible for customizing your Tailwind theme, like adding your own color or change any of the default stylings. Okay, let's continue to the following step. Now, the next step is to add all the plugins for Post Css to work with. So we basically need to create a new file named postcss.config.js. We need to copy all these lines of code. So we create this file, postcss.config.js. We paste those lines of code. Now we are telling Post Css to use these 2 plugins, which is Tailwind CSS and the auto prefixer. Now the next step is actually to add content in Tailwind config file. So in this step, we are actually going to add our HTML file location in the tailwind.config.js file. So all we need to do is actually go to tailwind.config.js file, okay? And now we need to actually explicitly tell Tailwind where are our HTML files located. So now I have my index.html file at the root of the folder, but I want it inside a public folder, all with another folder maybe for images. Okay, so let's grab this. Okay, now we have the index.html file inside public, so we need to tell TailwindCSS where it can find all the HTML file. To do that, we come right here, we type the location for those HTML files, so it's public, and then I want TailwindCSS to actually look through all the folders inside public. So if I have another folder called homepage, for example, and inside of it we have an HTML file, TailwindCSS is going to parse that as well. So we do that by using double stars, okay? Now, what I want to do is to tell Tailwind to actually parse every HTML file that you find, whatever its name is, okay? So all we need to do is to type the extension, and whatever the name is, it's okay, just parse it, TailwindCSS, as long as the extension is .html. Okay, so let's jump to the next step. Now, the next step is to create our main Tailwind CSS file. We don't have it right now, so if we go to the documentation, we see that we need to add this directives for each Tailwind layers to your main CSS file. Okay, so we need to create a main.css file. We can name it whatever we want. Let's create inside a new folder called Tailwind. Yeah. Okay, main.css file. Let's paste all those directives in layers. Let's hit save. Let's go back to the next step. Okay, so now the next step is actually to build the Tailwind CSS file. Now we have a package.json file, which is basically a file that includes some basic information about your application, such as its name, description, Git repository, and dependencies. So we need to create a script for generating the CSS file, and we will also add another script for watching our changes inside the HTML file. Let's do that. First, I want to go to the terminal. I'm going to type npm init and then y to generate a new package.json file with all the needed information. Okay, awesome. So now we have our package.json file. We go down to the scripts and we add our own script. So let's get rid of this. Let's add a new script called build. So I'm going to name this script build. So whenever we type, for example, npm run build, the Tailwind CSS is going to build our and generate our CSS file. So to do that, let's add that command that we were talking about, the Post Css command. So Post Css, and then we tell Post Css which folder actually contains the main Tailwind CSS file. So we have our file inside the Tailwind folder. So we type /tailwind /main.css. Now we need to add the O option for optimize, and then we need to tell Post Css where to actually save that generated file. So I want this file to be saved inside this public folder. So I will type public / the name of that file is going to be tailwind.css. Awesome. And the next script that I'm going to create, or command that I'm going to create, is actually the watch command. So whenever we type npm run watch, we are going to actually execute the same command, but with another option at the end, which is W for watch. We'll see the difference between them in just a second. So I have my scripts added. I don't have now the Tailwind CSS file, so let's generate it using the terminal. Let's clear this out. Let's write npm run build. If you watch here, we can see that our tailwind.css file is going to be added in just a second. Okay, now it's done, and we see that we have the Tailwind CSS file right here. Awesome. So remember, guys, to actually check if this Tailwind CSS file is valid, we can see that there are the most default stylings that we need. So these are probably just normalized styles. But if we go and scroll all the way down, we can see one other style at the end, which is text red 600. This is the only style. This is the only style we are using inside our index.html file. It's true. So basically, Tailwind CSS is working perfectly. Tailwind CSS did parse our HTML file, and we have only the text red 600 class inside our CSS file. If we add another, let's say text center, okay, hit save. If we go to the browser, we can see that there is an error here because we have changed the location for that index.html file. So it's okay. We can just do this. Oh, okay. We need to get rid of this JIT compiler. We see that the text center class is applied now. The heading is centered. So what if we check this Tailwind CSS file? Okay, so now checking this Tailwind CSS file, we see that we don't have this the text center class yet. That is because what we need to do is to actually link that Tailwind CSS file instead of the CDN file. So let's do link for CSS file. The name is Tailwind CSS. Okay, let's hit save. Now we need to run that command again. So it can parse all this HTML file again, and we get the classes from this Tailwind CSS file instead of that CDN. So basically now we are working locally. Everything is local. We don't use CDN. We are only using Tailwind CSS classes, and Tailwind is actually parsing our HTML and getting those classes inside this Tailwind CSS file. So for now, we only have the text red 600, but if we run npm run watch now, okay, instead of build, so it's going to get builded, and it's going to get built, and it's going to watch all the changes. So for example, we can see that this text center now is added, and if we add another class right here and save the file, for example, let's do text 5xl and save the file. It's going to run this script again, and we are going to find that new class inside Tailwind CSS. Awesome. So instead of getting all the classes used by Tailwind CSS, we are only getting the classes used in our HTML. This is awesome. Okay, so now let's jump to the documentation and discover some most commonly used classes. Let's talk about them. Okay, now we are on the Tailwind CSS documentation. The cool thing about this documentation is actually it's pretty easy to search for any style that you want to apply. So we go to docs, and if we type Control K, okay, we get this pop-up for searching all the documentation. It's Control K or Command K for Mac. So, for example, the most commonly used classes are classes for color. Okay, so decorating the text color, we can type text color or just color, for example, and hit enter, and we can get this. Okay, we go to text color right here, not decoration color. We can see all the classes for every color that Tailwind CSS provides for us. And if I want to actually search for a specific color, instead of scrolling all the way down, I can just hit Control F or Command F for the Mac and type whatever color we need to look for. For example, blue. We can see that here are all the blue colors provided by Tailwind CSS. If I type line, I can see all the classes for the line color. Awesome. Now another commonly used class is for the background color. So I can type background color, and I can see all the background colors available. Another one is for margin and padding. I can type margin if I need some margin. And I can see all the classes provided by Tailwind CSS for styling and adding the margin. So we have, for example, M0, which applies the 0 margin. This MX in MY actually is just like Bootstrap. So this MX is responsible for changing the margin on the x-axis. So both left and right margin are going to be 0 if you apply this class. On the other side, if you apply the my-0, you are actually adding a margin of 0 at the bottom and a margin of 0 at the top, so the y-axis. And we can also change each individual side, the margin for each individual side. So this is for the margin top property, okay? Margin top, margin right, margin bottom, margin left. And then we can change this dash number for other values. For example, if we scroll down, we see that M0.5 actually applies a 2-pixel margin, which equals to 0.125 rems. If I want to apply, let's say, a 1 rem value, what I need to do is to hit Control F and search for 1 rem, for example. Awesome. Now I get which class is responsible for adding this 1 rem margin. This is the 4, okay, value 4. So I can add a margin of 1 rem to all the sides using M-4, or only to the left and right side using MX, top and bottom using MY, only the top using MT. Let's go and try this out. We go to our index file. Let's get rid of this and add some margin of 8, let's say, just to get it visible. And as you can see, we have now margin applied. Yeah. I wanted to show you the value of the margin actually. So it's applying a margin of 32 pixels. If we go to M8, we can see that is 2 rem. Yeah, 2 rem for 32 pixels. Awesome. Another useful class is the padding class. So I can type padding and hit enter, and it's the same thing as the margin. There are also classes for the padding for the x-axis, the y-axis, and for each side. So the top, right, bottom, and left. Now, another cool thing that I want to show you in Tailwind CSS is actually how to apply the effects just like we do using normal CSS. For example, the hover effect, the focus effect, etc. So if we type hover right here, you can see all the classes for handling hover and other states. So for example, if you want this button to actually change color when hovering, you can see we are adding this hover prefix, okay? And then we add this class that we want to apply for that effect. So prefix, and then class. Okay, let's try this out. So let's say when we hover this head, this h1 tag, what I want to do is to have a background of, let's say, green 600. Hit save. Go to our HTML file. If we hover, we can see that the background is changing. Awesome. So I don't want to bore you by going to each available style. There's a simple rule, actually. Whatever style you want, you can search here on the documentation, and you get a list of all classes to apply on your HTML. Plus, you can rely on the Intellisense that VS Code actually provides you. So if we type text red, we can get all the variants of red. We type text blue, we get all the variants. We do background blue, we can also get all the variants. If we type, for example, justify, we get all the classes for the justify property. Awesome. Another essential thing that I want to show you is how to use the classes responsible for the responsive design. So if we type the search and type responsive, okay, you can see right here that we have some breakpoint prefixes with the minimum width and the related CSS rules. So, for example, if we choose this SM prefix, okay, it's basically we are telling TailwindCSS to apply a set of styles whenever we reach the minimum width of 640 pixels. So it's the same as adding your rules inside these curly braces for the media type of screen, for example, and for the minimum width of 640 pixels. So this is one of the most important and easy topics for Tailwind CSS. You just need to understand the basics of it. Here you can see the list of all breakpoint prefixes, and now let's go and try some of them live, okay? So let's go back. Let's get rid of all these texts, all these classes. We are only going to leave only the text center. So, and I want to apply a background of, let's say, red 500. So the simple idea is I want to change the background of this heading whenever we change screen size. So I want background color for all devices that are smaller than 640, okay? And I want another background color for all devices that are larger than 640, but they are smaller than 768. So we are going to use a combination of prefixes to apply those styles and see how it looks. So to do that, it's the same as the hover effect. We use the SM prefix for the for applying styles at the minimum width of 640 as the documentation. So let's apply another background of green. Let's do 600 whenever we reach that breakpoint. Another thing is the MD prefix for medium-sized screens. Let's do another. Let's do cyan, for example, 700, and one for the LG. Let's do background line, for example, 500. Awesome. Now let's try this out in our browser. We can see that the background color is still red because we are actually zooming in the browser. If we reset to 100%, we can see that the background is now lime background, which means we are hitting the LG breakpoint, which is for screens larger than 1024 pixels. So let's open up this, let's inspect this page and take a look. Let me zoom out. We zoom in a bit. Okay. If we check how the background color changes whenever we reach that breakpoint, I don't know if you can see my page. Let's zoom in a bit. Okay. So now we are currently above the 1024 pixels. So if we go down to 1018, for example, now we are using the styles for the MD prefix, this one, okay? Because our screen size is between 768 and 1024. And if we go down to 768, yeah, we can see that the background color is changing again for the SM breakpoint, okay? This one. Now, if we go to a screen size that is less than 640, as you can see here, okay? So by hovering over any class, you can see what does the CSS actually looks like for that class. So we are applying these styles for the minimum width of 640 pixels. Let's go to a smaller screen size, and we can see that the background color is changing. So that's how simple it is to actually use the responsive design system of Tailwind CSS. All we need to do is add some prefixes and the class, and then the class that we want to apply. Another thing, if we want to actually apply another class for that breakpoint, we can do SM again, and then change the text color, for example, to white. Excuse me, text white. Hit save. Okay, so we are applying two different classes for the SM breakpoint. Let's go take a look. So it's a black, and now it's white. Now it's black, now it's white. It goes through, stays white for all the other breakpoints. If we want to change the color again, we need to specify that color for that breakpoint. For example, if we want a white text for the SM breakpoint and the MD breakpoint, but we want to change it for the line breakpoint, what we need to do is actually type LG and then text, let's say red 800, save, go back. We can see that the text color is white for both SM breakpoints and the MD breakpoint. But once we reach the LG breakpoint at 1024, the text color actually changes to red 800. Awesome. Okay, so another interesting topic that I want to talk about is the dark mode using Tailwind CSS, because nowadays dark mode in websites is pretty common. So almost every tech company wants their site in light versions and dark version as well, because now people are visiting websites more on mobile devices and TVs rather than desktops. There's actually an interesting survey conducted on 2021, I think, which proves that 56% of users actually use mobile devices when visiting websites. And this percentage is going to increase in the near future. So both light and dark versions are very important for users and developers. And Tailwind made this process much faster and easy for all developers. You just need to use the dark prefix before the classes, just like using this SM prefix. It implements the same, actually, just like the hover prefix, the SM prefix, the MD prefix. Let's take a look at the documentation first. So if we go to dark mode, we can see that actually dark mode uses two ways or two strategies for actually toggling the dark mode. So the first strategy is media, and media actually Tailwind tracks the mode that your device is using. So for example, if you are using a mobile device and your mobile device, you are enabling the dark mode, then all these styles applied for the dark mode using Tailwind CSS are going to be applied instead of the light mode. Okay, so for example, in Tailwind CSS, it's using the class, the other strategy, which is toggling it manually. So we can go here and either try the system one, which is the same as dark, because my system now is running on dark theme, and we can change also to the light theme. Okay, awesome. So what I want to do is take the same approach as the Tailwind CSS website and do it manually. So to do it manually, first we need to change that strategy from the default value, which is media, to the class strategy. Okay, now we do that by going to tailwind.config.js file, and then we add this dark mode class line. Okay, so let's do that first. Go to Tailwind CSS, under content, we paste this dark mode class. Okay, we save the file. Now to actually add some classes for the dark mode, we need to use dark prefix and then the class that we want to use. So if you want text color to be like in here, if you want the background to be white, but you want it to be black for the dark mode, all you need to do is add the background white as a simple class, and then add the background black as class for the dark prefix. Now, what you need to keep in mind is that in order to toggle the dark mode, you need to actually add this dark class to the container of that element, or you can add it to the HTML container just to be safe. So let's try that actually. But before doing that, what I want to do is to get rid of all these classes. Okay, I'm going to keep the text center, and I'm going to actually take a look at my website. Okay, let's get rid of this. Let's zoom in. Okay, awesome. So this is the light mode of our simple website. Now, what I want to do is actually to change the background color to dark gray maybe, and then change the text color to a white color when we are using the dark mode. So to do that, we first need to actually enable the dark mode by adding this class right here, dark. And what we need to do is to add the prefix dark and then the class that we want to apply whenever that dark mode is enabled. I want to apply a background color of gray 800, and let me do also dark text white. Okay, so for the dark mode, the background is going to be gray and the text color is going to be white. So I'm saving this file and it should be working. Awesome. Okay, now let's see how we can apply custom styles and how we can customize our theme using Tailwind CSS. So when talking about customization, the first thing I want to show you guys is this notion. So let me keep all these classes and let's go back here. What if I want to add a margin for the top side, but I don't want to pick any predefined size. So if it's 4, then it's 1 rem. If it's 8, then it's 2 rem. What if I want 2.2 rems? Can I do that using Tailwind? Of course you can. You can do that using the brackets, the square brackets notation, okay? So we open up some square brackets, and then we type the value that we want. So I want 2.2 rems. I hit save. If we go back here, we can see that we have some margin top added right here. And it's going to be 2.2 rems, which actually is 35.2 pixels. And if we see here, you can see that we have 35.2 pixels as a margin. You can see that under the background color. Awesome. Now, the other way to actually customize your Tailwind CSS theme is to do that inside the tailwind.config.js file. But for now, we only have a simple Tailwind config.js file. What we want to do is to, let me grab this line because we are going to need it. Okay, so I'm copying this line. I want to get rid of this file. And let's generate it again, but with all the classes included. We can do that using the npx Tailwind CSS init -- full as option. We hit enter, and we are going to generate a tailwind.config.js file with all the classes used by Tailwind inside. So we can maybe change this the SM value. So we can change the minimum width of the SM prefix. We can change it for the MD prefix. We can go and add some colors right here. We can change this the columns right here, the value, the default values for spacing, animation, basically all the stylings provided by Tailwind CSS. Okay, so maybe I want to add a new color right here. Let's call it title. So our color is going to be called title. So if we are applying blue color using text blue, we are going to apply this title color using text title. So let's do something random like yay, and some number. Let's hit save. Okay, I have saved the file. Now behind the scenes, Tailwind is generating a new Tailwind CSS file for us. Let's try and use this newly added color inside our HTML. So let's change the color. Let's get rid of, okay, let's leave the dark theme. And instead of text white, I'm going to apply text title. And awesome, if everything works all right, we can see that already Tailwind CSS is telling us that, hey, this text title class is actually adding this value to the color property. And this is working absolutely fine. We can check, yeah, we only need to generate that file again. So run npm run watch. Okay, go back. Okay, I know where the problem is. Remember that content that we have added before? We had, yeah, we need to add it right here. Also, we need to change the dark mode from media, which is the default option, to class. And we save the file. Now we can see the color changing right here. So this is the color that we have added, the title color, and it's now working just fine. This is how you can customize with Tailwind CSS theme or design system. Now, the last thing I want to show you guys is the functions and directives in Tailwind CSS. So basically, Tailwind CSS provide us with some directives that do some stuff and some functions that are also responsible for more functionality. So for example, this Tailwind directive we have already used inside the main.css file, if you remember correctly. Yeah. So this is used to add these layers. They are called layers. So the base layer, components, utilities. And there's another directive for applying more styles to those layers, which is the layer directive. You can see it right here. So for example, if we want to apply more styles to the base layer, what we need to do is use the add layer and then the name of the layer that we want to change, and then all the different stylings that we want to add. Now, the other most important directive is the apply directive. So we actually use this apply directive to apply Tailwind CSS classes to newly created classes. So you might be asking, why do we need to do that? I'll give you a quick example. Let's create a simple button first. So let's have our button right here. Click E. Okay, let's add some classes. So for our button, we need some padding, let's say 4. Okay, we need some background color. Let's go with blue 300. The text is going to be gray. Let's go with gray text of 800. We need some rounded border radius. So this rounded class actually adds a border radius. We could see that inside our documentation, but at this point, we don't need to actually look at the documentation at all, because we have this auto suggest feature in our VS Code, which gives us tremendous help to choose our classes. So let's pick, for example, rounded MD. Let's give it more margin of, let's say, 8. And now let's take a look at our button. Okay, it looks kind of big to me. So let's only give it padding on the x-axis. Awesome. So we do have this kind of button. We can add more functionality maybe by adding some hover effect. So hover, let's change the background color to blue, a more darker blue. And also let's change the color to, let's do a white color for more contrast. Okay, now you can see that we have our hover effect and we have this button class, this button stylings all set. So for example, let's say you have different buttons inside your HTML. So you're probably going to add a button right here, and then another button inside another section, another one here, another one here. So basically, this can become pretty tedious, especially if you want to customize one of the buttons. So if you are going to change any of these classes, you need to change all the classes for all the buttons. Another way to do that is to actually use the apply layers. So that's the directive that solves for us the disadvantage that we have talked about earlier. So instead of adding all these classes right here, I can cut all the classes. I can choose a class like button, save this file, and then go to main CSS. I can use the apply directive, but we cannot just use it like here. We need to create that button class, and then inside of it, we use that apply directive, and then we paste all those classes. Awesome. So just keep in mind, guys, that if you are using VS Code, if you save this file, it's going to result in an error, because actually VS Code uses auto formatters to make your code more beautiful. By doing that, it's adding some space right here, which doesn't work. So we need to get rid of this and then save without formatting. We can do that using Control-Shift-B or Command-Shift-B if you are on Mac. Okay, so if we take a look at our browser, we can see that now we have the same style, even though we are using this button class, because we are applying all those classes using this apply directive right into this button class. Awesome. So now, if we want to add more buttons, all we need to do is actually do this, and our buttons are added. Our HTML looks beautiful. And on top of that, if we want to actually customize some of the stylings for the button, we don't need to customize each class for each button. All we need to do, go to main CSS and just fiddle around inside of this apply directive. Awesome. Okay, so let's jump straight ahead into our project and try to clone a simple, easy website from the internet using Tailwind CSS. So I'm thinking we should clone this Tesla.com website because it's pretty straightforward. We don't have a lot of contents in this website. So let's take a look. Yeah, so basically this website is pretty awesome. We have a simple navigation bar on the top. The navigation bar actually includes three stuff. We have the logo on the left side, this nav links at the center, and these external links on the right side. We have this, I think this is an H1 tag. Let's make sure this is an H1 tag. Okay, yeah, it's an H1 tag. We don't need this. We just want to mimic as closely as possible. We want to clone this website using Tailwind CSS in a matter of minutes. So all we need to do is have this navigation bar ready, have these images, and each section is pretty much the same as the other section. We have the same buttons, the same text here. Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. Let's start with the navigation bar. Okay, so let's change this title to be the same as Tesla's. So electric cars, solar, and clean energy. Electric cars, solar, and clean energy. Okay, let's get rid of all these buttons. Let's save this file. And we're going to start with the navigation bar. We are going to create this header element. Inside of it, we have three stuff. We have the logo, and we have the nav links and the external links. So external links and nav links. Okay, so for the logo, we need an image. I have already downloaded all the images needed. So I have this down arrow, okay? I have this 5 icon of Teslas, and I have the picture for each model. So we have Model 3, Model S, X, Y, solar panels, and a picture for the solar roof. And here is the logo for the Tesla, this one. Okay, so our logo, we are going to add it straight from images and tesla.svg. Let's check our website right here. So localhost 5,000. It's 5,500. Okay, so public index. Awesome. So yeah, we have this logo right here. Let's change the height. Let's change the height of the image to maybe 6, which is 1.5 rem, 24 pixels. Okay, are we zooming in? We're not zooming in. Let's do H5. Okay, let's do something else. Let's let us scale all the sizings inside our HTML by doing this trick. So we need to type HTML and do font size to be, let's say, 62.5% to be 10 pixels instead of 16. Okay, so I have saved this file again, and by saving this file, we have introduced this spaces right here, so this won't work. Okay, let's save without formatting. Awesome. Yeah, awesome. Now we have, it's basically, it looks almost the same, right? It's okay. We need also to add this 5 icon right here, so let's do that now. Let's add this link to a 5 icon, and it's in images, 5 icon, let's save. And I think we can see it right here. Awesome. Okay, so for the nav links, we are going to have a div. Inside of it, we are going to have some link tags. I think there are 5 or 6. Yeah, 6. Okay, so we have 6. First one is going to be model S. The second one is going to be model 3. Okay, so bear with me for a second. Model X, model Y, and model maybe solar panel. So each link is going to be take us to one of these sections. So if we hit model X, it's going to scroll down to model X. Okay, so let's do that. Let's add this href right here, model S. Okay, model 3, model X, model Y. Let's do also solar roof. Amazing. Now let's have this duplicated. Okay, now let's do the external links. So we have a div with an a tag, 3 a tags, 1 for shop, 1 for account, and 1 for menu. And let's not think about this for now. Okay, after this header, we are going to have a section. But before we go to the section and the HTML for that section, let's first start styling this navigation, okay? So now our website looks pretty much like this. We need to add some styles to achieve the same stylings as the navigation from Tesla.com. Okay, so let's take a look at how our HTML or our web page actually looks like now. You can see that we need to add some stylings to achieve the same navigation bar as the Tesla.com page. So let's get straight into it first. Okay, so the first class we need to use is the flex class, actually, to use the display flex, making all the elements go straight horizontally. Okay, item center. Do justifying between. So this class, let's talk about each class. This actually changed the display property to flex. This one actually changed the align items property to center, so we center everything vertically. And this is to justify content, align items horizontally. Now let's have a full width. And since this navigation bar is going to be fixed at the top, we need to change the position to fixed and top to 0. Okay, what else? We need to maybe add some more Z index to make this navigation on top of every other element. Let's put some height of, I don't know, maybe 5.4 rems. Okay, let's also do some padding of maybe 3 rems. Let's take a look. Okay, I think we can work with this for now. Let's continue and start styling these links right here. So for each link, we want text to be slightly larger. So we use text 2XL maybe. Let's take a look. Okay. Okay, we can work with this. Let's make it just a bit bold. So we use font, semi-bold. Let's add some color. Let's use the same color as Tesla's. Okay, so it's 17.1.8.20. 17.1.8.20. Okay, so we can do that just by using these square brackets. So it's 17.1.8.20. Awesome. What else? We need some margin on both the left and the right side. The margin is going to be really small, so maybe 0.7 or 0.8 rems. We also want some padding on the horizontal axis. Maybe the same thing. Let's try the same thing. Okay, what else? We need some padding maybe on the top. We need to add a hover effect to achieve this hover effect right here. Okay, so basically this hover effect uses the same color with some opacity, I think. So let's try that. So when we hover, I want to actually apply a background color, same color as the text. So 17.1.8.20. And to actually change the opacity, all we need to do is do slash, and then let's say, so this is the alpha code. So let's do 50 and take a look at what we get. Yeah, so 50 is a lot. Let's try 10, for example. Awesome. Okay, so all we need is some padding on the top, padding on the right and left, and to round all the borders. So let's do that. So let's add more padding for the top and bottom sides. Let's do 0.4 rems. Okay, let's do rounded. Let's do 0.8 rem. What else? Let's do, the background should be transparent without hovering over it. Also, I want to add some transition to the hover effect. We can do that using TailwindCSS by adding this class. So we do transition, and then it lets you actually choose which, what do you want to affect? What do you want this transition to affect? So let's do all, and we can do also a duration class. For the duration, maybe we need to do 300 to 200 milliseconds. Let's try this one. So let's take a look. Awesome. I think this is the behavior we want. So we have that transition, we have that background color. Yeah, all we need to do now is to apply the same class to all different links from the navigation. So why not use another class? So for example, instead of copying all these classes and adding them to each and every A tag, let's go to main CSS, add a new class called maybe navlink, and do apply. Then paste all those classes, save without formatting. And now all we need to do is add class navlink. Let's copy this. Let's add it to each individual link. Okay, now we can get rid of all these classes and use navlink instead. Awesome, so we are saving the file. Let's take a look. And awesome, now it looks really, really great. So now we can jump and work on the other sections. Okay. Now for the other sections, each section is going to be for a different product. First one is going to be for the Model S. So let's do this as a comment, excuse me. And this is the end for the Model S. Okay, let's get it right over here. Okay, awesome. So for each section, there's going to be an image. Okay, we are also going to have a div inside of it. We are going to have an h1 and an h2 element. What else? the other thing, we need to add a couple of buttons. So we need to add these two buttons also. So let's do that inside this div. We have a button. And, okay, so for this one, it says custom order. And this one is for existing inventory. Existing inventory. Okay, so this is for the model S. And this one says order online for touchless delivery. So order online for touchless delivery. Okay, awesome. Okay, so we have all these, we have the section in the code for that section, the HTML right inside here. All we need to do now is add some stylings to our HTML and to achieve the same behavior as the Tesla.com website. So for the source here, we need to use the model S image. Okay, so this looks pretty big. We need to change the height of this section to be the same as the screen. So let's add some classes first for the section. Classes are going to be with full and h screen to be the same as 800 VH, same as screen. We want the position to be relative as well. The other thing we need to do for the image is to add some stylings for the width and height and for the object cover property. So let's do with full and height full, and then add this class object cover. So basically, this object cover actually changed the object fig property. So we're changing the object fig for this image to cover, which takes the whole space for the container, and it actually makes it responsive. So we take a look right here. We can see that this image is pretty much responsive. We can get this screen smaller, and the image is going to still fit the screen. Okay, awesome. Okay, so let's continue with the other HTML elements. So we have here, we can do model S image. Now let's start coding classes for this H1 and H2 elements. So the model S in that order online text. So what we need to do is to actually get this div right inside here at the top and to center it out in the screen. So it's going to have a position of absolute. So absolute, the top is going to be maybe 20%. Oh, okay, now we have it right here. Let's do left 50%. And let's do text center as well. What we can do also is, let's take a look first. Okay, so we have this this div right here. So we are translating it actually to 50% to the right, but it's still not centered. We can do this using one simple class. Let's do it inside the main CSS. We are going to add, let's call it transform and 50, for example. This is basically just a simple class to translate the element horizontally and vertically 50%. So let's do minus 50% and minus 50%. Let's add this class to our div right here. So transform 50. Okay, now we can see that this div is centered correctly. So let's start styling the text inside this div. Let's start by making this head one a bit bigger. So we can apply a text. Check this out. We can apply text of foreign, for example, and then we can apply another color, which is going to be the same as this one. Okay. Now we need also to make it a bit bold. So let's do semi-bold. Let's take a look now. Awesome. Okay, so let's do the same thing for the H2 element right here. So let's grab these classes. Let's add them right here. Let's take a look. Okay, maybe we need it to be a bit bigger. Let's go with text and 2 grams. Save the file. Go here. Okay, a bit too much. Let's get rid of this font semi-bold. Okay, we need maybe 1 rem. 5. Okay, this looks good. All we need is to, let's put this inside the span. Okay, yeah, let's put this touchless delivery inside this span. Let's give this span a class of underline. So underline. Let's take a look. Awesome. Okay, now all we need to do is to add the stylings for the buttons and to add that little arrow, this arrow here, inside our section. So let's get straight to it. Okay, so for our buttons, we need to put some stylings to the container first. So our container is going to be have the position of absolute. So yeah, absolute. We are going to take it a bit down using this top, let's say 60% first. Let's go to left 50 also, and add the same transform. 50 transform 50. Also, maybe we should text center everything. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, so you can see that we have this div centered right here. We have this text right here. I don't know if you can see it, but you can check that my cursor is changing whenever I hover over it. So let's go and start styling those buttons. So for the first one, we need maybe text white with a background. Let's do the same one. And maybe we need to make it more opaque. So let's try 50. What else? We can add, let's do uppercase and take a look for now. Okay, so we have the button right here. We need it to be more bigger and more padding and more modern. So let's go and do that. So let's do text to XL. Let's have a font bolder or semi-bold. Okay, let's do medium. Yeah, let's do medium. What else? We need to add some padding and add some margin and add some padding, excuse me. So let's have a padding of 0.5 grams. We can check it out right now, but we also need to have it rounded, to have the border radius to be rounded. Let's do something like maybe 3 grams. Okay. What else? We need maybe to change the height to 16. Let's try this. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, all we need now is some, let's take a look at this one. We need more padding for the left side and the right side. The top and bottom paddings are okay. Yeah, looks good. Let's just add though the padding. Maybe we should use the same way for both buttons, just like this one. So it's basically the same way. It's pretty visible. So let's first add the padding to be, let's go with, excuse me, padding to be 3 rems. So we are changing the padding for both left side and the right side to be 3 rems. Let's take a look. It looks good. It looks good, but we need to change this to be 80. Let's take a look. Yeah, yeah, it looks the same now. Okay, let's do maybe width of 25 rems. Let's try this first. Yeah, looks good. Okay, awesome. Okay, so pretty much we need the same stylings for the second button. We are just going to change some stuff, like for example, the background and the text color. So the background is going to be white for this one. Let's go with the white background, and let's change the text to be the same as the others. So 171820. Let's hit save. What else do we need to add? I don't think we need to add anything. Maybe some margin at the left side. So let's do ML to be, let's go with 4 or let's go with 8. Let's take the file, take a look. Awesome. Okay, so we have some margin right here. What I need to do is take those buttons a bit more down. So let's change the top to right here from 60. Let's go with 85%. Let's save this file, check this, change. You can see that now it's working great. Let's get rid of this. Yeah, it's looking good. We can continue for now. This needs to be a bit more, we need to add some more opacity to the background light. Maybe we go with, let's try 70%. Okay, so this looks good for me. Yeah. Okay, the other thing we need to add is that that down arrow. So let's grab this SVG from here. Okay, and let's add it right after this div that contains both buttons. So let's add it inside in a tag, because remember, this arrow is going to take us to the next section. And yes, for SVGs, we can also add some classes, some CSS, some Tailwind CSS classes. So before doing that, let's take a look at how our SVG is looking. So it's pretty big. We need to be absolute, it need to be at the bottom of the page. We need it to have a smaller height than the default one. So let's do all this. First, I want it to be 820, and let's do absolute. Let's also do top. Let's go with 90%. And maybe add, let's do with full width. Let's take a look now. Okay, I need to refresh the page again. Yeah, and we can see it right here. Maybe let's bring it close to the bottom just for a bit. Okay, this looks good. Yeah, this looks kind of good. Awesome. So all we need to do now is actually to add some animation to this link right here. And using Tailwind, we can go and check for the animations. Let's do animation. So basically, there are some classes, predefined classes for animation. We have the animate spin, animate ping, animate pulse. We have this animate bounce right here. Let's try this one first. So I can add this class to this SVG, save the file, and check our changes again. So this, after refreshing the page, this should be bouncing right here. Yeah, awesome. Awesome. So yeah, basically now we have our basic template or basic clone working great. All we need to do is add the other sections, and I'm going to leave the responsive design for you guys to work with, just for you to actually exercise all what we are learning. So we are going to talk about the responsive design for this website in just a second, but first let me add the other sections quickly, okay? Okay, so now after working out all the IDs, we can check that, yeah, now it's working pretty fine. So whenever we click on this arrow, we are going to the next section. What if we click on the Model S, Model 3, Model X, Model Y, solar panel, solar roof? Awesome. So now we are pretty much finished with cloning this website. So let's talk about the responsive design for a bit. So as for a quick overview, I think what you need to do is to hide these links for screen devices that are less than large devices, for example, 1024 pixels. So whenever we hit that breakpoint, we will hide all these links, only leaving this menu button. Also, another thing we can do is change the flex for these buttons from flex row to flex column whenever we reach a smaller breakpoint. Other than that, there's nothing to add to this. Let me just show you how to hide stuff, and we will do it for one single, or maybe for all the navigation bar. So pretty much what we want to do is to use this hidden class. Okay, so I'm going to use this hidden class for every nav link that we have except the menu link. Okay, so hidden, one for the shop and one for the account also. We hit save, and if we go back to our website, we can see right after refreshing the page that now all these links are going to be hidden. Let's do it again. Yeah, now we only have this menu button right here. So let's try and resize this screen so it's always hidden. What I want to do is to actually change the display property of those links when we reach the LG breakpoint. So whenever we reach a screen size of 1024 pixels or higher, all those hidden links are going to be shown again. So to do that, we use this prefix LG, and then we can do a block. Okay. So we are just changing the display property from none, because hidden actually is just setting display to none, to display block. Okay. So let's do this again. Let's do this right here, and let's also do this right here and right here. We save this file, we go back to our website. Okay, and now we can actually see that we need a class right here to be flex. Another one right here, flex. If we take a look now, we can see that we have all the nav bars. The nav links are actually shown when we are on larger screen, but whenever we scroll down, we resize the screen, we can see now that our menu is visible, but the other links are not. Okay, so this pretty much concludes today's session. Thank you very much for watching this session. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. And I hope I see you next time on another session. Okay, see you again. Bye-bye.